The transport ship hummed through the dark space between stars. Inside, Corporal Ji-won Park sat in the military section, watching the other soldiers clean their weapons. His own rifle lay across his lap, already spotless. He had checked it 3 times already. Old habits from the war never really went away. Ji-won touched his chest without thinking. Even through the uniform, he could feel the raised skin underneath. The scar ran from his left shoulder down to his ribs. It was thick and rough, a permanent reminder of the day he almost died. That had been 2 years ago at Proxima Station when the plasma blast tore through his armor. The medic said he was lucky. Ji-won did not feel lucky. He just felt alive, which was more than he could say for the 5 soldiers he had been trying to save that day. "Stop touching it," said Private Daeho from the seat beside him. "You always do that when you're nervous." Ji-won dropped his hand. "I'm not nervous. You've checked your rifle 3 times. We're going to a coronation, not a battlefield." Daeho grinned, but his eyes were serious. They had served together for 4 years. They could read each other like books. "A coronation full of aliens who hate us," Ji-won said quietly. "And we're supposed to stand there and smile." Daeho shrugged. "Orders are orders. Besides, Ambassador Hyeji knows what she's doing. She wouldn't take us into a trap." Ji-won hoped that was true. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Coalition for only 15 years. Before that, there had been nothing but war. First contact had not gone well. The aliens thought humans were primitive. Humans thought the aliens were invaders. 5 years of brutal fighting followed before both sides agreed to talk instead of shoot. Even now, most alien species did not trust humans. They called humans the violent ones or the savage species. Human soldiers were respected for their fighting skills but feared for their aggression. Ji-won had read the reports. At diplomatic meetings, other species would request that human guards stay outside. They made everyone nervous. That was why this invitation surprised everyone. The Valerian Empire was one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had never invited humans to any royal event before. When the new Queen Morel personally requested human security guards for her coronation, the entire coalition started asking questions. "Why do you think she asked for us?" Daeho wondered aloud, as if reading Ji-won's thoughts. "Maybe she wants to make a statement," said Corporal Jisoo from across the aisle. She was checking her sniper rifle, her movements precise and practiced. "Show the galaxy that humans are trustworthy." "Or maybe it's a test," added Captain Minho, walking down the aisle toward them. The captain was a veteran of the First Contact Wars, with gray already showing in his hair despite being only 35. "Either way, we follow protocol. Professional behavior at all times. No mistakes?" "Yes, sir," they all replied together. Captain Minho stopped beside Ji-won's seat. "Park, you'll be on close protection duty. The ambassador specifically requested you." Ji-won blinked in surprise. "Me, sir? Why?" She didn't say. "Maybe because you have medical training. Maybe because your record is spotless. Maybe because you know how to keep your mouth shut." The captain's expression softened slightly. "You're a good soldier, Park. Just do what you do best. Watch, listen, and keep people alive." After the captain moved on, Ji-won sat back and closed his eyes. Close protection duty meant he would be standing right next to the ambassador during the ceremony. He would be in the throne room, surrounded by thousands of aliens, most of whom probably wished humans had never joined the coalition. The thought made his chest tighten with anxiety. The scar on his chest began to itch. It always did when he was stressed. He forced himself not to touch it. 3 hours later, their ship emerged from faster-than-light travel. Through the window, Ji-won saw Valaris Prime for the first time. The planet looked like it was made of glass. Its surface sparkled with cities built from some kind of crystal that caught and reflected light in every color imaginable. Even from space, it was beautiful. "I've heard their buildings are alive," Daeho said, pressing his face against the window. "The crystals grow and respond to thoughts." "Psychic architecture," Jisoo confirmed. "The Valerians are all psychics. They can move things with their minds and sense emotions. Some can even heal injuries just by touching you." Ji-won felt his stomach drop. "They can sense emotions?" "Don't worry," Jisoo said with a slight smile. "They consider it rude to read someone without permission. It's against their laws." That made Ji-won feel only slightly better. He did not like the idea of anyone poking around in his head. He had enough nightmares without sharing them. The landing process took another hour. Their ship was guided to a military dock away from the main palace. Security was extremely tight. Valerian guards in silver armor scanned everything multiple times. They looked at the human soldiers with what Jiwan thought might be suspicion or maybe just curiosity. It was hard to tell with alien faces. Ambassador Hyeji met them at the docking bay. She was a small woman in her 50s, but she carried herself with absolute authority. Behind her stood her assistant Yunji and 2 diplomatic staff members. "Welcome to Valaris Prime," she said to the soldiers. "I know this is unusual duty for all of you, but I need you at your best. The galaxy is watching us. One mistake could set back human-alien relations by decades. We understand." "Ma'am," Captain Minho replied. Hyeji's eyes moved to Jiwan. "Corporal Park, walk with me." Jiwan fell into step beside the ambassador as they moved through the crystal corridors of the dock. The walls seemed to glow with their own light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "Do you know why I requested you specifically?" Hyeji asked. "No, ma'am. Because you have something these Valerians value. You have scars that mean something." She glanced at his chest, even though the scar was hidden under his uniform. "I read your file. You took that plasma blast while pulling wounded soldiers to safety. You put yourself between them and death." Jiwan said nothing. He did not like talking about that day. "The Valerians have a saying," Hyeji continued. "They believe that scars are maps of a person's soul. Every wound tells a story. Every mark shows a choice that was made. They respect warriors who bear their scars openly." "I'm not sure I understand, ma'am." Hyeji stopped walking and turned to face him. "The new Queen Morel has her own scars. I don't know the full story, but I know she chose you for a reason. Just be yourself, Corporal. Be the man who values other lives more than his own. That is what she wants to see." Before Jiwan could ask what that meant, alarms began blaring throughout the docking facility. Red lights flashed. Valerian guards rushed past them, weapons drawn. Captain Minho's voice crackled over the radio. "All units, we have a security breach. Unknown hostiles in the south wing. Ambassador, get to the safe room now." Jiwan's training took over immediately. He drew his sidearm and moved to shield Ambassador Hyeji with his body. In the distance, he heard weapons fire and shouting in languages he did not understand. The coronation had not even started yet, and already something had gone terribly wrong. His scar began to itch again, but this time Jiwan barely noticed. His mind was already calculating angles, exits, and threats. The scarred soldier was back in combat mode, and despite everything, a small part of him felt relief. At least this he understood. The security breach turned out to be a false alarm. Some nervous guard had mistaken a cleaning crew for intruders. By the time everything calmed down, 3 hours had passed. Jiwan spent those hours standing in a defensive position, his weapon ready, watching every shadow. When the all-clear signal finally came, his legs were stiff and his shoulders ached. "Welcome to diplomatic duty," Deho joked as they finally stood down. All the tension of combat, none of the actual fighting. Jiwan managed a weak smile. His nerves were still on edge. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, but he could not explain what. It was just a feeling in his gut, the kind soldiers learned to trust after enough battles. The coronation ceremony was scheduled for the next evening. That gave the human delegation 1 day to prepare and adjust to Valaris Prime. Ambassador Hyeji insisted they all get proper rest, but Jiwan found sleep impossible. He spent most of the night reviewing security protocols and studying maps of the palace. The palace itself was beyond anything Jiwan had imagined. When they finally saw it the next morning, even Captain Minho stopped to stare. The structure rose from the planet's surface like a frozen waterfall, all smooth curves and sharp angles at the same time. The crystal walls were transparent in places, showing floors and corridors inside. Other sections glowed with soft colors that shifted slowly like clouds at sunset. "It's alive," Yunji explained, as they approached the main entrance. "The entire palace is a living organism. It grows and changes based on the psychic energy of the people inside. The Valerians have been cultivating it for over 10,000 years. 10,000 years, Deho repeated in a whisper. Humans were still figuring out farming back then. The interior was even more impressive. The floors felt solid but looked like walking on water. The walls hummed with a sound that was barely audible, almost like singing. Everywhere Jiwan looked, he saw Valerian nobles in elaborate robes that seemed to float around them. The aliens were tall and thin, with skin that had strange patterns running across it. Those patterns glowed faintly, and Jiwan realized they were probably linked to the psychic abilities Jisoo had mentioned. The humans drew attention wherever they walked. Conversations stopped. Aliens turned to watch them pass. Some looked curious. Others looked distinctly unfriendly. Jiwan kept his expression neutral and professional, but his hand stayed close to his weapon. They were shown to their positions in the great hall where the coronation would take place. The room was enormous, easily large enough to hold 5,000 people. The ceiling was so high that Jiwan could barely see it, and it was covered with crystal formations that looked like frozen lightning. At the far end of the hall stood a throne made from a single piece of black crystal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Corporal Park, you'll stand here," said one of the Valerian security coordinators. His name was something Jiwan could not pronounce, so he just nodded politely. The alien pointed to a spot about 20 feet from where Ambassador Hyeji would be sitting. "You will have a clear view of the entire ceremony. Do not move unless there is a genuine threat." "Understood," Jiwan replied. The coordinator looked at him for a long moment. "You are the one with the chest wound, yes? The plasma scar?" Jiwan was surprised the alien knew about that. "Yes." "The Queen knows of you," the coordinator said, then walked away before Jiwan could ask what that meant. The ceremony began as the twin sons of Valaris Prime reached their highest point. Jiwan stood at his assigned position as thousands of aliens filed into the Great Hall. There were dozens of different species, each stranger than the last. Some had multiple arms, others had skin like metal or stone. A few floated in the air without any visible means of support, but all of them watched respectfully as the ceremony began. Music filled the hall, though Jiwan could not see any instruments. The sound seemed to come from the walls themselves, rising and falling in patterns that made his chest vibrate. Then a procession entered from a side door. Valerian priests in white robes walked slowly toward the throne, chanting in their ancient language. Behind them came the Queen. Jiwan had seen pictures of Valerian royalty before, but nothing prepared him for seeing Queen Morel in person. She was taller than the other Valerians, standing at least 7 feet high. Her skin was pale blue, and the bioluminescent patterns that covered her arms and neck glowed with a soft silver light. Her eyes were the most striking feature, completely silver without any visible pupils. Yet Jiwan somehow knew exactly where she was looking. She wore a robe that seemed to be made of liquid light, flowing around her as she walked. Her hair, if it could be called that, looked like strands of pure white energy that moved on their own. On her head sat a simple crown of dark metal that contrasted sharply with everything else about her appearance. As she walked toward the throne, her eyes swept across the assembled crowd. They paused briefly on the human delegation. For just a moment, Queen Morel's gaze locked with Jiwan's. He felt a strange sensation like a gentle pressure against his mind, there and gone in an instant. Her expression was unreadable, but she held his gaze for 3 full seconds before continuing toward the throne. Jiwan felt his heart beating faster. He did not understand what had just happened, but something had definitely passed between them in that moment. The coronation ceremony continued for over an hour. Priests spoke blessings in the old language. Representatives from different noble houses came forward to pledge their loyalty. Other alien species offered gifts and promises of alliance. Through it all, Queen Morel sat perfectly still on the black throne, her silver eyes watching everything. Jiwan maintained his position, alert for any signs of danger. His training kept him focused, but part of his mind kept returning to that brief moment when the Queen had looked at him. Why had she stared at him specifically? What had that pressure against his mind been? The ceremony was nearly finished when everything went wrong. A group of Valerian nobles stood to offer their house's pledge of loyalty. They walked toward the throne in formation, their robes marking them as members of a powerful family. But as they got closer, Jiwan noticed something odd. Their movements were too synchronized, too military. His gut instinct screamed warning. "Something's wrong," he said quietly into his radio. Captain Minho's voice came back immediately. "What do you see?" "Those nobles approaching the throne. They move like soldiers, not politicians." Before anyone could respond, the nobles threw off their robes. Underneath, they wore combat armor. Weapons appeared in their hands, pulled from hidden storage devices. They opened fire on the Queen. The great hall erupted into chaos. Aliens screamed and ran in every direction. The crystal walls flashed red as the palace's defense systems activated. Valerian guards rushed forward, but they were too far away. Jiwan did not think. He just moved. His legs carried him forward at a full sprint. He drew his sidearm as he ran, firing 3 shots that hit one of the attackers in the chest. The alien went down. Taeho and Jisoo were moving too, taking up positions to create crossfire. Captain Minho was shouting orders, coordinating with the Valerian security forces. But Jiwan only had eyes for the Queen. One of the attackers had gotten through the initial defense. He was raising a blade, some kind of energy weapon that glowed with deadly light. Queen Morel was trying to stand, her hands raised as psychic energy gathered around her. But she would not be fast enough. Jiwan threw himself between them. The blade struck him across the chest, cutting through his uniform and slicing into the old scar tissue. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot and overwhelming. He heard himself scream but did not stop moving. He crashed into the attacker, driving them both to the ground. His weapon discharged twice more, point-blank into the alien's armor. Then everything became a blur of motion and sound. More guards arrived. The remaining attackers were subdued or killed. Someone was pulling Jiwan away from the body beneath him. His chest was wet with blood, and the world was starting to spin. He felt himself being lowered to the ground. Faces appeared above him, but he could not focus on them. His vision was going dark at the edges. Then a new face appeared, one with silver eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. Queen Morel knelt beside him, her hands pressed against his chest, directly over his wound. He felt a strange warmth spreading through his body, pushing back against the pain. Her fingers traced the old scar, the one he had carried for 2 years. Her expression changed, showing something like shock or recognition. Her lips moved, speaking words in her own language that Jiwan could not understand. But he heard the emotion in them, something deep and profound. Then she switched to the common tongue, her voice soft but clear. "Here lies my heart," she whispered, her silver eyes locked on his. Jiwan wanted to ask what that meant, but his voice would not work. The warmth from her hands was everywhere now, knitting his torn flesh back together, pulling him back from the edge of death. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was her face, those silver eyes filled with something he could not name. Then nothing. Jiwan woke to the sound of soft humming. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to dim blue light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The ceiling above him was made of crystal that pulsed gently like breathing. For a moment he could not remember where he was or what had happened. Then the pain hit him. Not the sharp agony of a fresh wound, but a deep ache that radiated from his chest. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "Please do not move yet." The voice was calm and melodic, speaking perfect human standard language with only the slightest accent. "Your body is still healing." Jiwan turned his head carefully. A Valerian medical attendant stood beside his bed, checking monitors that displayed information in symbols he could not read. Beyond the attendant, he could see other beds, some occupied by humans, others by aliens. This was clearly a medical facility. "How long have I been here?" Jiwan asked. His throat felt dry and rough. 18 hours since you were brought in." "You were very fortunate. The Queen's healing stabilized you, but the wound was severe. Without her intervention, you would have died within minutes." The memories came flooding back. The coronation, the attack, throwing himself in front of that energy blade, and then the Queen's face above him, her hands on his chest, her voice saying those strange words. "The others," Jiwan said urgently. "My team, are they safe?" "All human personnel survived. 2 of your soldiers sustained minor injuries but have already been released. Ambassador Hyeji has been here several times to check on you." Relief washed through Jiwan. He let his head fall back against the pillow. "And the attackers?" 4 were killed, including the one you shot. 3 were captured alive." The attendant paused, then added quietly, "You saved the Queen's life. All of Valaris Prime knows this now." Before Jiwan could respond, he heard footsteps approaching. The attendant immediately stepped back and bowed deeply. Jiwan tried to sit up again despite the pain. Queen Morel entered the medical bay. She was not wearing her ceremonial robes anymore. Instead, she wore a simple garment of deep blue that covered her from neck to feet. Without the crown and formal attire, she looked less intimidating, though no less impressive. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin glowed softly in the dim light. "Leave us," she said to the attendant, who bowed again and quickly departed. The queen also made a gesture toward the medical bay entrance, and Jiwon realized there must have been guards outside. She was dismissing everyone. Jiwon struggled to sit up properly, trying to show respect despite his condition. The queen raised a hand. Please, remain still. You are injured because of me. I will not have you damage yourself further out of protocol. She moved to the chair beside his bed and sat down with surprising grace. Up close, Jiwon could see that her silver eyes were not uniform. They had depths and layers, almost like looking into polished metal. Your Majesty, Jiwon began, but she interrupted him. Mirel. When we are alone, you may call me Mirel. Jiwon did not know what to say to that. A queen asking a common soldier to use her personal name seemed impossible. She studied his face for a long moment. Do you remember what happened after you were wounded? Some of it. You healed me. Yes, and I touched your scar. The old one beneath the new wound. Her eyes moved to his chest, though it was covered by medical bandaging. I said something to you. Do you remember the words? You said, "Here lies my heart." I did not understand what you meant. Morel was quiet for several seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Among my people, scars are not hidden. We believe they tell the truth about a person in ways that words cannot. Every wound represents a moment when someone made a choice, when they faced pain and survived it. Scars are maps of the soul. She stood and turned away from him, facing the crystal wall. I have read the reports about you, Corporal Ji-won Park. I know how you received your original scar. You were trying to save 5 soldiers who were trapped when their transport was hit. You pulled 2 of them to safety before the plasma blast struck you. The other 3 died, but not because you stopped trying. You kept fighting to reach them even after you were wounded until you collapsed from blood loss. Ji-won felt his throat tighten. He did not like talking about that day. I failed them. No, you chose their lives over your own safety. That is what your scar represents. Sacrifice. The willingness to endure pain so that others might live. Morel turned back to face him. When I touched your scar, I felt that choice. My people are psychic, but it is not mind reading. It is feeling, sensing the emotions that were embedded in traumatic moments. Your scar spoke to me of your character. I still don't understand why that matters to you. Morel reached up and touched her own neck, just below where her robe began, because I understand what it means to carry such marks. She hesitated, then slowly pulled the collar of her robe down a few inches. Ji-won saw a scar running along her left shoulder, disappearing beneath the fabric. It was not like human scars. The tissue was darker than her normal skin, and it seemed to disrupt the bioluminescent patterns around it. But it was unmistakably a scar. I have never shown this to anyone outside my closest advisors, Morel said quietly. Not in over 30 years. What happened? I was young, barely considered an adult by Valerian standards. I served in our military, stationed at a colony world on our empire's border. There was a civil conflict, a dispute between noble houses that turned violent. My family, my house, they gave me orders to abandon a civilian settlement that was in danger. The civilians were from a lower caste, considered expendable. I was told to preserve our military resources instead. She pulled the robe back up, covering the scar again. I refused. I took my unit and defended those civilians against my family's direct commands. We saved most of them, but the fighting was brutal. I was wounded badly, and when it was over, my family declared me a traitor. They were killed in retaliation by the opposing houses, and I was left alone. Ji-won listened in silence, beginning to understand. I carry this scar as a reminder, Morel continued, a reminder that I chose those innocent lives over my own blood, over my family's honor. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. I lost everything because of that decision. You did the right thing, Ji-won said without hesitation. Protecting the innocent is always right. Morel's silver eyes met his, and he saw something like relief in them. That is why I requested human guards for my coronation. I have watched your species since you joined the coalition. I have seen how you fight, how you protect each other. Other species fear you because you are violent, but they do not understand. Humans are violent in defense of others. You do not abandon your wounded. You do not leave your people behind. That is what makes you different. She sat down in the chair again, closer this time. When I saw your scar during the healing, when I felt what it represented, I knew I had been right about you. About humans. You and I, we are the same. We carry the weight of our choices on our bodies. We bear the marks of valuing other lives more than our own. Here lies my heart, Ji-won repeated her words from before. Is that what you meant? In my culture, to say those words while touching someone's scar is to acknowledge a deep connection. It means I see your pain, I understand your sacrifice, and I recognize that we share something fundamental. It is not said lightly. Jiwan felt his pulse quicken. Why are you telling me all of this? Because more attacks are coming, Morel said, her tone becoming serious. The nobles who tried to kill me yesterday were part of a larger conspiracy. My intelligence officers have confirmed it. There are those who do not want me on the throne, who oppose my plans to reform our society and strengthen ties with other species, especially humans. She leaned forward. I need someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who understands what it means to sacrifice for a greater cause. The Valerian noble houses see you as beneath them, as a primitive alien soldier. But I see you as someone who shares my values, my willingness to pay the price for doing what is right. What are you asking me? I am asking you to be my personal guard. Not just for the remainder of this diplomatic visit, but for as long as you are willing. I am asking you to stand beside me as I face those who want me dead, as I try to change an empire that has been the same for 10,000 years. Jiwan stared at her, hardly believing what he was hearing. I'm just a corporal. I'm nobody important. You are a person who threw himself in front of an energy blade to save someone you had never spoken to before. You are a person whose scars tell a story of honor and sacrifice. That makes you more important than any noble in my court. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of the medical equipment. Jiwan thought about everything she had said, about her scar and his own, about the weight they both carried. If I agree, he said slowly, I need to know something. Why did you really look at me during the coronation, before the attack? You knew something about me already. Morel smiled slightly, the first real expression of warmth he had seen on her face. I had studied the files of all the human security personnel. When I saw you in person, I wanted to see if my instincts were correct. I wanted to see if you were truly the person your record suggested. She paused. I was right. Jiwan took a deep breath, feeling the ache in his chest. Then I accept. I'll stand with you. The Queen reached out and placed her hand gently over his bandaged chest. Over 3 days after the coronation attack, Jiwan was released from the medical bay. His chest still ached when he moved too quickly, but the Valerian healing had worked miracles. The new wound was already sealed, leaving only pink tissue that would soon become another scar crossing over the old one. Captain, Minho met him outside the medical facility with Deho and Jisoo. His team looked relieved to see him walking on his own. Welcome back, Minho said, gripping Jiwan's shoulder carefully. You scared us badly. When we saw you go down, we thought we had lost you. Hard to kill, Jiwan replied with a weak smile. Apparently so. Minho's expression became serious. We need to talk. Things have gotten complicated. They walked through the palace corridors toward the human delegation's quarters. Jiwan noticed that everywhere they went, Valerian nobles and servants stopped to stare at him. Some bowed their heads slightly in what might have been respect. Others glared with obvious hostility. You are famous now, Jisoo said quietly. The human who saved the Queen. It is all over the planet's information networks. Some love you for it. Others hate you. Why would they hate me? Because you are human, Deho said bluntly, and because now the Queen has announced you will be her personal guard. A lot of important Valerians think that position should go to one of their own people. When they reached the delegation quarters, Ambassador Hyeji was waiting with her assistant Yoonji. The ambassador looked tired, like she had not slept properly in days. Corporal Park, she greeted him. I am glad to see you recovered. Please sit. We have much to discuss. Once everyone was seated, Hyeji began laying out the situation. The investigation into the coronation attack has revealed a conspiracy much larger than we initially thought. The attackers were members of 3 different noble houses working together. They are part of a faction that opposes Queen Morel's reforms and especially her openness to working with humans. How many houses are involved? Minho asked. We are not certain. At least 7, possibly more. They call themselves the Keepers of Tradition. Yoonji pulled up a holographic display showing images and documents. They believe the Valerian Empire should remain isolated and pure. They see cooperation with other species, especially humans, as a contamination of their culture. Jiwan studied the information. So they tried to kill the Queen before she could be properly crowned. If she died during the ceremony, who would take power? Her cousin, Lord Thane, Hyeji answered. He is sympathetic to the Keepers, though we have no proof he was directly involved in the attack. With Morel dead, he would become emperor and immediately reverse all her proposed reforms. And now they know their first attempt failed, Minho said grimly. They will try again. Exactly. Which is why the Queen has made some unusual decisions. Hyeji looked directly at Jiwan. She has requested that you and your team become her permanent security detail, not just for this visit but ongoing. She wants human guards around her at all times. Jiwan had expected this after his conversation with Morel, but hearing it stated officially still felt surreal. What does that mean for our military service? You would be reassigned, Minho explained. Officially attached to the Coalition Diplomatic Corps, but serving under the Queen's direct authority. It is an honor, Park. It also puts you in constant danger. I already agreed to do it, Jiwan said simply. Hyeji nodded. I thought you might have. The Queen seems quite certain about you. However, I need to warn you about something. There are political forces at work here that go beyond simple assassination attempts. The Keepers of Tradition have allies in other species' governments. Some members of the Coalition Council believe humans are getting too much influence too quickly. If you fail to protect the Queen, it will be used as evidence that humans are not ready for positions of real authority. No pressure then, Teho muttered. I am being honest with you because you deserve to know what you are walking into, Hyeji continued. This assignment could help establish humanity's reputation in the galaxy. It could also destroy it. Everything depends on you keeping Queen Morel alive. The weight of that responsibility settled on Jiwan's shoulders. He touched his chest unconsciously, feeling the bandages underneath his uniform. When do we start? He asked. Tomorrow. The Queen has a full schedule of meetings with noble houses. She is deliberately confronting those who oppose her, forcing them to either swear loyalty publicly or reveal themselves as enemies. You and your team will be with her for all of it. That night, Jiwan could not sleep. He stood on the balcony of his quarters, looking out over the crystal city of Valaris Prime. The buildings glowed softly in the darkness, creating a landscape of colored light that was both beautiful and alien. 2 moons hung in the sky, casting silver shadows across everything. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Jisoo joining him on the balcony. Cannot sleep either, she asked. Too much thinking. About the Queen. Jiwan nodded. She told me things in the medical bay. Personal things about her past. I keep wondering why she trusts me so much when we barely know each other. Jisoo was quiet for a moment. I read a report about Valerian psychology. They process trust differently than humans. For them, a single moment of truth can establish a bond that would take us months to build. You showed her who you are by taking that blade for her. That is all she needed to see. It feels like too much responsibility. Welcome to being a soldier, Jisoo said with a slight smile. We all carry responsibility for lives that depend on us. You have just been doing it longer than most. She looked out at the glowing city. But there is something else bothering you. I can tell. Jiwan hesitated, then decided to be honest. She has scars like mine. She showed me and told me how she got them. We have both lost people, both made hard choices. When she talks to me, it feels like she understands things about me that I have never told anyone. That scares you. Yes. I am just a soldier. She is a queen. This connection between us, whatever it is, it does not make sense. Jisoo turned to face him directly. Does it need to make sense? You saved her life. She sees something in you worth protecting and trusting. Maybe that is enough. Before Jiwan could respond, an alarm echoed through the palace. Not the sharp emergency alert from the coronation attack, but a lower, more sustained tone. His combat instincts immediately kicked in. His communication device activated. It was Captain Minho. All units, we have a situation. Someone breached the Queen's private chambers. She is unharmed, but there was an intruder. Get to the command center now. Jiwan and Jisoo ran through the corridors, joining Daeho and Minho at the security command center. The room was filled with Valerian guards and human soldiers, all studying displays and tactical maps. A senior Valerian officer was speaking. The intruder entered through a maintenance passage that should have been sealed. They got within 50 feet of the Queen's bedroom before guards detected them. The individual escaped using some kind of short-range teleportation device. Did they get a clear image? Minho asked. Yes, it is being processed now. The officer gestured and a holographic image appeared. It showed a figure in dark clothing with their face partially covered. But what caught everyone's attention was the symbol on their chest, a stylized representation of an old Valerian family crest. House Mordain, the officer said quietly. One of the oldest and most powerful houses. They have been part of the Empire's ruling council for 6,000 years. And now they are sending assassins, Yunji said, from beside Ambassador Hieji. The implications were clear. The Keepers of Tradition were not just a fringe group. They included some of the most powerful families in the Empire. This was not going to be a few isolated attacks. This was the beginning of something much larger. Where is the Queen now? Jiwan asked. In the secured throne room with her closest advisors. She has requested your presence, Corporal Park. Jiwan looked at Captain Minho, who nodded. Go. That is your assignment now. The throne room had been converted into a command center. Maps and data displays covered the crystal walls. A dozen advisors stood around a large table, arguing in rapid Valerian that the translation devices struggled to keep up with. At the center stood Queen Mirelle, still wearing her sleeping robes but looking fully alert and in command. She saw G1 enter and immediately walked toward him. The advisors fell silent, watching. You came quickly, she said. I heard there was an attempt. An intrusion, not yet an attempt. But it proves what we suspected. The Keepers are not finished. She glanced at her advisors, then back to G1. Walk with me. They moved to a quieter corner of the room, away from the others. Morelle's silver eyes were troubled. This is going to get worse before it gets better, she said quietly. House Mordain's involvement means the conspiracy reaches into the highest levels of power. I will have to confront them directly, and when I do, they will try to kill me again. Then we will stop them again, Jiwan said with more confidence than he felt. You say that so simply, as if it is already decided. It is. I gave you my word. I stand with you. Morelle studied his face for a long moment. You are very different from Valerian warriors. They would speak of honor and duty. But you speak of simple commitment. No grand words, just a promise kept. Is that bad? No, it is refreshing. She touched his shoulder. The meeting with the noble houses went badly from the start. Jiwan stood behind Queen Morelle's chair as 5 representatives entered the reception hall. Each wore elaborate robes displaying their house colors and symbols. 3 bowed respectfully. 2 barely inclined their heads. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jiwan kept his hand near his weapon, watching every movement, every expression. Beside him, Daiho and Jisoo maintained similar positions, forming a protective triangle around the Queen. Your Majesty, said Lord Valen of House Meridian, one of the respectful ones. We come to reaffirm our loyalty to the throne and to discuss the recent troubles. Troubles, repeated Lady Syrah of House Corthan, one of the hostile ones. Her tone made the word sound like an insult. Is that what we are calling the placement of alien guards around our Queen? The elevation of a primitive species to positions they have no business holding? Morelle's expression did not change, but Jiwan saw the bioluminescent patterns on her neck pulse slightly brighter. A sign of anger, he had learned. Corporal Park saved my life, Morelle said calmly. He has earned his position through action, not inheritance. He is human, Lady Syrah said the word like it tasted bad. These creatures have been in space for barely a century. They know nothing of our traditions, our culture, our ways. How can such a being protect you adequately? He already has. Once. Through luck and violence, the only things humans understand. Lady Syrah stood, her robes flowing around her. Your Majesty, I speak for many when I say this decision troubles us deeply. The noble houses have protected Valerian rulers for 10,000 years. To replace us with aliens insults our honor and our history. Lord Corrin of House Mordain, the second hostile representative, also stood. Jiwan tensed, remembering that this was the house whose symbol the intruder had worn. We invoke the ancient law, Corrin said formally. The trial of worthiness. If this human is to hold such a position, he must prove himself according to our traditions. The 3 loyal House representatives looked uncomfortable. Lord Valen spoke carefully. The trial has not been invoked in over 300 years. It is a harsh test meant to push warriors to their absolute limits. Then it is perfect for proving whether this human deserves his position or not, Lady Syrah said with a cold smile. Unless he is afraid? Ji-won understood what was happening. This was a trap. If he refused, it would look like cowardice and weakness. If he accepted, they would use the trial to hurt or kill him legally, removing him from the Queen's side. Before Morel could respond, Ji-won stepped forward. I accept. The Queen turned sharply to look at him. Ji-won, you do not have to do this. Yes, I do, he said quietly. If I refuse, they will never stop questioning whether I deserve to be here. Better to face it now. Morel's silver eyes searched his face. He could see she wanted to argue, but she also understood the political reality. Finally, she nodded. Very well. The trial of worthiness will commence tomorrow at dawn. Corporal Park will face it under my authority. Lady Sierra's smile widened. Excellent. We shall see what this human is truly made of. That evening, Captain Minho tried to talk Ji-won out of it. This is a mistake. You are still recovering from your wounds. They will choose opponents designed to exploit your weaknesses. I know. Then why do it? Because if I do not, they will keep trying to remove me through politics and schemes. This way, everything is settled in one day. Either I prove I belong, or I fail and they win. Ji-won was checking his equipment, making sure everything was ready. Besides, how hard can it be? Daeho laughed nervously. Very hard, apparently. I have been reading about past trials. The last one resulted in the challenger being hospitalized for 3 months. That is encouraging, Ji-won muttered. Jisoo entered carrying a data pad. I got information on the trial structure. There are 3 challenges. First is pure combat against a strength-based opponent. Second is a mental challenge against a psychic warrior. Third is a skill demonstration against a weapons master. You have to win all 3. All 3, Ji-won repeated. Of course. There is more. You cannot use firearms, only traditional weapons, blades, staffs, hand-to-hand combat. The Valerians see guns as dishonorable in personal trials. Ji-won had trained in close combat, but it was not his specialty. He was a medic first, a soldier second. Hand-to-hand fighting was his weakest area. The noble houses had chosen this trial specifically because it played to Valerian's strengths and human weaknesses. Queen Morel came to see him late that night. She dismissed his guards and entered his quarters alone, which Ji-won knew was probably breaking several protocols. You should be resting, she said, looking at him with concern. I am too nervous to rest. You could still refuse. I could declare the trial invalid. That would only make things worse for you politically. No, I have to do this. He tried to smile. I have survived worse things. Morel moved closer, her bioluminescent patterns glowing softly in the dim light. The trial is designed to be brutal. The first opponent will try to break your body. The second will try to break your mind. The third will test your skill against someone who has trained for centuries. You are not making me feel better. I am being honest. She reached out and touched his chest gently, over his scars. But I believe in you. You have already proven yourself to me. This trial is not for my benefit. It is for theirs, so they can save face when I keep you as my guard. Her hand was warm against his chest. Ji-won felt his heart beating faster, and he knew she could probably feel it too. Why do you care so much? He asked quietly. You could have any warrior in the galaxy protecting you. Why does it matter if it is me? Morel was quiet for a long moment. Because when I touch your scar, I feel understanding. I feel kinship. You and I, we are the same in the ways that matter most. I do not want another guard. I want someone who shares my values, who has paid the same prices I have paid. She looked up at him, her silver eyes reflecting his face. I want you. The words hung in the air between them. Ji-won knew she meant them in multiple ways, some he was not ready to think about yet. Then I will win, he said simply. For you. She smiled, the first truly warm smile he had seen from her. For us both. Dawn came too quickly. Ji-won was escorted to an arena deep beneath the palace. The space was ancient, carved from solid rock thousands of years ago. Seats rose in tiers around a circular fighting floor. Hundreds of Valerians filled those seats, come to watch the human either prove himself or fail spectacularly. Queen Morel sat in the royal box, her expression unreadable. Beside her sat the hostile noble representatives, Lady Syrah and Lord Corrin, both looking satisfied. A Valerian official stepped into the arena center. The trial of worthiness begins. Corporal G1 Park of the human species will face 3 challenges. He must succeed in all 3 to be deemed worthy of his position as the Queen's personal guard. The crowd murmured. G1 heard some supportive voices, but mostly skepticism and hostility. First challenge, the test of strength. A massive Valerian warrior entered the arena from the opposite side. He stood at least 8 feet tall with muscles that looked like they were carved from stone. His skin was darker than most Valerians, almost black, and his bioluminescent patterns pulsed with a deep red color. He carried no weapon. He did not need one. G1 was given a short staff. The official stepped back. Begin. The giant warrior moved faster than something that size had any right to move. He closed the distance in seconds, swinging a massive fist at G1's head. G1 barely ducked in time, feeling the air displaced by the blow. He could not match this opponent in strength. That was obvious, so he would have to be smarter and faster. As the warrior swung again, G1 stepped inside the reach, using his staff to strike at the knee joint. The warrior barely flinched, but G1 felt the impact jar his arms. The fight became a desperate dance. The warrior was overwhelmingly strong, but he was also somewhat slow to change direction. G1 used his human agility, rolling and dodging, striking at joints and weak points whenever possible. Human endurance. Training meant he could keep moving when others would tire. 5 minutes passed. 10. The warrior was breathing harder now, frustrated by his inability to land a solid hit. G1's arms ached from blocking the few blows he could not dodge, but he was still standing. Then G1 saw his opening. The warrior, overextended on a punch, putting all his weight forward. G1 dropped low, sweeping his staff at the warrior's leading leg while it bore all his weight. The giant stumbled. G1 immediately struck the back of his knee, then used the momentum to bring the staff up into the warrior's jaw. The warrior went down hard. The crowd gasped. G1 stood over him, breathing heavily, staff ready. The warrior tried to rise but collapsed again. He had lost. The official stepped forward. Test of strength passed. G1 looked up at the queen. She was standing now, her hands gripping the rail of the royal box. Relief was clear on her face, but there were still 2 more challenges to survive. Second challenge, the official announced. The test of mind. A smaller Valerian entered the arena, female, wearing simple robes. Her bioluminescent patterns were, unlike any G1 had seen before, swirling and moving across her skin like living things. A psychic warrior, one who fought with mental powers rather than physical force. Begin. The warrior did not. G1 took another step forward, pushing against the psychic assault. The warrior's expression changed from surprise to concern. She increased her power and G1 felt like his skull might split open. But he kept walking. How? The warrior whispered, her concentration wavering. Your mind should be broken by now. My mind is already scarred, G1 said through gritted teeth. You cannot break what has already been broken and healed. He reached her and tapped her shoulder gently with his hand. She stumbled back, releasing her psychic grip. The pressure in his head vanished instantly. G1 almost fell from the relief, but he forced himself to stay standing. The official stepped forward. Test of mind passed. The crowd was completely silent now. No one had expected the human to survive even the first challenge, let alone 2. G1 looked up at Queen Morel again. She was gripping the rail so tightly that her knuckles had changed color. He tried to smile at her to show he was all right, but his head was pounding too badly. Final challenge, the official announced. The test of skill. An elderly Valerian entered the arena. He moved slowly, as if each step required effort, but his eyes were sharp and alert. In his hands he carried 2 curved blades that seemed to shimmer in the light. A weapons master, someone who had trained for centuries. G1 was handed a single straight blade. It felt heavy in his tired hands. His arms still ached from the first fight and his head throbbed from the second. Now he had to face a master swordsman with hundreds of years of experience. Begin. The old warrior moved, and suddenly he was not old anymore. His body flowed like water, the blade spinning in patterns too fast to follow clearly. Ji-won barely got his sword up in time to block the first strike. The impact nearly knocked the weapon from his hands. The master attacked again, testing Ji-won's defenses. Each strike came from a different angle, precise and controlled. Ji-won fell back, blocking desperately. He had basic sword training, but nothing compared to this level of skill. He was outmatched completely. A blade got through his defense, cutting his shoulder. Not deep, but enough to draw blood. The crowd murmured. Another strike cut his leg. Then his other arm. The master was toying with him, demonstrating the massive gap in their abilities. Ji-won realized he could not win this fight through skill. The master had forgotten more about sword fighting than Ji-won would ever know. But maybe that was not the point. Maybe the test was not about winning. Maybe it was about something else. He stopped trying to match the master's technique. Instead, he did what humans did best. He adapted. He started using his environment, making the master move around the arena. He mixed in grappling moves, kicks, anything that was not traditional sword work. He fought dirty, the way soldiers fought when their lives depended on it. The master seemed confused at first, then interested. He began to adapt too, countering Ji-won's unusual tactics. The fight turned into something strange, a mixing of ancient technique with modern improvisation. Ji-won was bleeding from a dozen cuts now. His uniform was torn and stained red. But he was still standing, still fighting. The master pressed harder, driving him back toward the arena wall. In that moment, Ji-won made a choice. He dropped his sword. The crowd gasped. The master stopped, his blades raised. "Why do you surrender?" "I am not surrendering," Ji-won said, breathing hard. "I am acknowledging truth. I cannot beat you with a blade. You have centuries of skill I will never match. But that does not mean I am not worthy." He straightened, despite his wounds. "I am worthy because I keep fighting even when I cannot win. I am worthy because I adapt to impossible situations. I am worthy because I will stand between threats and the person I protect, regardless of the cost to myself. That is what makes me a good guard. Not sword skill, not tradition, commitment." The arena was completely silent. The master lowered his blade slowly. He studied Ji-won for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He bowed. "You understand something many warriors trained centuries to learn," the old master said quietly. "The weapon does not matter. The technique does not matter. Only the spirit of the warrior matters. You have that spirit." He turned to the official. "Test of skill passed." The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Others shouted in protest. Lord Corrin was on his feet, arguing with the official. Lady Sira looked furious. But Queen Morel was smiling, tears running down her face. The official raised his hands for silence. "All 3 tests have been passed. Corporal Ji-won Park of the human species is deemed worthy of his position as personal guard to Queen Morel. Let no one question his right to stand at her side." Ji-won's legs finally gave out. He collapsed to his knees, exhausted and in pain. Medical personnel rushed into the arena, but before they reached him, Queen Morel was there. She had jumped from the royal box, ignoring all protocol, and ran to his side. "You foolish, wonderful man," she said, her hands already glowing with healing energy as she pressed them to his wounds. "You did not have to prove anything to me." "I know," Ji-won managed to say, "but I had to prove it to them, and maybe to myself." She healed the worst of his injuries right there in the arena, in front of everyone. It was an intimate act in Valerian culture, one usually reserved for close family. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Later, after the medical staff had treated his remaining injuries and given him something for the pain, Ji-won was returned to his quarters. He expected to be alone to finally rest. But an hour after sunset, Queen Morel came to his door. "May I enter?" she asked formally. "Of course, Your Majesty." "Morel," she corrected gently, stepping inside. "When we are alone, please call me Morel." She had changed from her formal robes into something simpler. She looked less like a queen and more like just a person. She carried a small container that glowed softly. "This is a healing salve from my homeworld," she explained. "It will help your cuts heal without scarring, unless you want more scars to add to your collection." "I think I have enough scars," Ji-won said with a tired smile. She sat beside him and began applying the salve to the cuts on his arms. Her touch was gentle, and Jiwon felt warmth spreading through his skin. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. "Why did you come here?" Jiwon finally asked. "You have servants who could bring medicine." "Because I wanted to see you. To thank you properly for what you did today. You endured all of that for me." "For us both," Jiwon corrected, echoing her words from the night before. "You said this was about proving I belong, making it easier for you politically." "That is true, but it is also more than that." She finished with his arms and moved to the cuts on his shoulder, pushing aside his shirt to reach them. Her fingers traced the edges of his scars, both old and new. "I need to tell you something. Something I have not told anyone. You do not have to. I want to." She took a breath. "When I was young and I defied my family to save those civilians, I thought I was doing the right thing. I still believe I was. But the cost was so high. My family died. I was left alone. For 30 years I have carried the weight of that choice, wondering if I made the right decision, wondering if I was selfish to put my own sense of honor above my family's wishes." Her hand rested over his heart, over his scars. "Then I met you. I touched your scar and felt the same choice. You put others before yourself. Even when it cost you deeply, seeing you, knowing someone else made that same choice and stands by it without regret, it helped me understand something. We were both right. The pain we carry does not mean we were wrong. It means we were willing to pay the price for our principles." Jiwon placed his hand over hers. "Morel, I need to be honest with you. I am just a soldier. You are a queen. The connection between us, it feels impossible. I do not understand what this is or where it can go." "Neither do I," she admitted. "My people live for centuries. You will grow old while I remain unchanged. I am royalty. You are common-born. There are 1,000 reasons why this should not work." She looked up at him, her silver eyes reflecting his face. "But when I am with you, none of those reasons seem to matter. What are you saying?" She moved closer to him, her face inches from his. "I am saying that I care for you, Jiwon Park, not as a guard, not as a useful political ally, as a person who makes me feel understood for the first time in decades. I am saying that when I touch your scars, I feel home." Jiwon's heart was racing. "This is dangerous. If people find out, they will use it against you. Against us both. Let them try." Her voice was fierce. "I have spent 30 years alone, making decisions for everyone else, sacrificing my own happiness for duty. For once, I want to choose something for myself. I choose you." Before Jiwon could respond, alarm suddenly blared through the palace. His combat instincts took over immediately. He was on his feet, reaching for his weapon, despite his injuries protesting. Morel stood too, her expression shifting from vulnerable to commanding in an instant. The door burst open. Captain Minho rushed in with Diho and Jisoo right behind him. "We are under attack. Multiple breaches across the palace. This is not a small infiltration team. This is a full assault." Jiwon looked at Morel. She nodded once, understanding passing between them without words. Whatever personal feelings they had would have to wait. Right now they had a battle to fight. "How many?" Morel asked, her voice calm and authoritative. "At least 50 hostiles that we have detected so far." The throne room was chaos when they arrived. Loyal Valerian guards fought desperately against the attackers who had breached from multiple entrances. Energy weapons flashed in the darkness. The crystal walls were scorched and cracked from the fighting. Bodies lay scattered across the beautiful floor. Jiwon took in the situation in seconds. "Daeho, left flank. Jisoo, find high ground and give us covering fire. Captain. Coordinate with the Valerian commanders. I stay with the Queen." His team moved immediately, following orders without question. Morel stood beside him, her hands glowing with psychic energy. She was not helpless. As an attacker rushed toward them, she raised her hand and the enemy was thrown backward with invisible force, crashing into the wall. "Not bad," Jiwon said, firing controlled shots at targets across the room. "I am more than just a pretty face," Morel replied, deflecting an energy blast with a psychic shield. They fought their way deeper into the throne room, moving toward the raised platform where the black crystal throne sat. That position would give them a defensive advantage. Around them, humans and Valerians fought side by side. Daeho was using his combat training to devastating effect, taking down attackers with precise strikes. Jisoo's sniper rifle cracked from somewhere above, each shot finding its target. But there were too many enemies. For every attacker they defeated, 2 more seemed to appear. Jiwon realized this was not just an assassination attempt, This was a coup, a full attempt to overthrow the Queen and seize power. "They are trying to overwhelm us with numbers," Captain Minho shouted over the noise. "We need reinforcements." "They are coming," Morel said, her voice strained from the effort of maintaining her psychic defenses. "I have sent word to loyal houses, but they may not arrive in time." An explosion rocked the far wall. A section of crystal shattered, and through the gap came more attackers. Leading them was Lord Corran of House Mordain, wearing combat armor and carrying an energy blade. Behind him was Lady Syrah, her hands crackling with deadly psychic power. "So the leaders finally show themselves," Morel said coldly. Lord Corran smiled as he approached. "This ends tonight, Morel. Your foolish reforms, your alliance with these primitive humans, all of it ends. The old ways will be restored." "The old ways are dead," Morel shot back. "You are just too blind to see it. Then we will bury you with them." Lady Syrah raised her hands, gathering psychic energy for a devastating attack. Jiwan moved without thinking. He stepped directly in front of Morel, raising his rifle. "You will have to go through me first." "Gladly," Lady Syrah said, and unleashed her power. The psychic blast should have torn Jiwan apart. But Morel was faster. Her own power surged, creating a shield around both of them. The two psychic forces collided in the air, creating a shockwave that knocked everyone nearby to the ground. While the two psychic warriors were locked in their battle of wills, Lord Corran charged at Jiwan. The Valerian noble was skilled, his energy blade moving in deadly patterns. Jiwan met him with his own blade, the one he had kept from the trial. Metal rang against energy as they fought. Corran was better with a sword, but Jiwan was more desperate. He had promised to protect Morel. He had promised to stand with her. He would not break that promise now. He fought with everything he had, ignoring his exhaustion and pain. Around them, the larger battle raged. Deho was wounded but still fighting. Jisoo had run out of ammunition and switched to her sidearm. Captain Minho was coordinating defensive positions with the Valerian guards, trying to hold back the endless waves of attackers. But they were losing ground. Slowly, inevitably, they were being pushed back. There were simply too many enemies. Then Corran's blade found an opening. Jiwan tried to dodge, but he was too slow. The energy weapon struck him in the chest, cutting deep across both his old scars. The pain was beyond anything he had ever felt. He stumbled backward, his vision going dark. He heard Morel scream his name. The sound was filled with anguish and rage. Something inside her broke, and her psychic power exploded outward with devastating force. Lady Syrah was thrown backward, her attack shattered. Lord Corran was lifted off his feet and hurled across the room. Attackers within 50 feet were knocked unconscious by the pure force of her emotion. But the effort cost her. Morel collapsed to her knees beside Jiwan, her energy completely drained. She pulled him into her arms, her hands pressing against his chest wound. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to heal him. But she had used too much power. She had nothing left. "No, no, no," she whispered desperately. "Do not leave me, please. I just found you. You cannot leave me now." Jiwan could barely hear her. The world was fading. He could feel his life slipping away. But he managed to raise one hand and touch her face. "Here lies my heart," he whispered. "With you? No. I will not accept this." Morel's voice was fierce through her tears. She looked up. "Medics! Someone help him!" Human medical personnel rushed forward, along with Valerian healers. They worked frantically, combining their different technologies and techniques. Jiwan felt himself being lifted, moved. Voices spoke around him in urgent tones. Someone was attaching medical devices to his body. Morel's hand never left his, holding on as if she could keep him alive through will alone. The battle continued around them, but Jiwan was no longer aware of it. His consciousness was slipping away into darkness. The last thing he felt was Morel's hand in his and her voice begging him to stay. Time lost all meaning. There was only pain and darkness, then nothing at all. When Jiwan woke again, he was in a medical bay. But this time felt different. His chest felt strange, not painful exactly, but changed. He opened his eyes slowly and saw Morel asleep in a chair beside his bed. She looked exhausted, her usually glowing patterns dim. How long had she been there? "She has not left your side in 3 days," said a human doctor, noticing he was awake. "We nearly lost you twice. The combination of human technology and Valerian healing was the only thing that saved you. Even then it was close, and the battle won." After you went down and the Queen's power surge, reinforcements arrived from the loyal houses. The attackers were defeated or captured. Lord Corrin and Lady Syrah are in custody, along with most of the Keeper leadership. It is over. Morel stirred at the sound of their voices. Her silver eyes opened and immediately locked onto Jiwan's face. For a moment she just stared, as if afraid he might disappear. Then she stood quickly and moved to his side. "You came back," she said softly. "You came back to me." "I promised I would stand with you," Jiwan replied, his voice weak. "I keep my promises." She took his hand carefully and he felt something. A sensation that had not been there before. He could feel her emotions, her relief and joy and lingering fear. It was like a connection had formed between them, deeper than just physical touch. "What is that?" he asked. "During the healing, when we combined human and Valerian methods, something happened," the doctor explained. "The psychic energy used in the Valerian healing process created a bond between you. You can feel each other's emotions now. It is permanent." Morel and Jiwan looked at each other. The connection between them was no longer just emotional or philosophical. It was real, tangible, a part of them both now. "Are you all right with this?" Morel asked quietly. "I did not mean for it to happen. I was just trying to save you." Jiwan thought about it. He could feel her uncertainty, her hope, her fear of rejection. And through that connection, she could feel his acceptance, his warmth, his growing affection for her. "I think," he said slowly, "that I am more than all right with it." She smiled and he felt her joy through their bond. She leaned down carefully and rested her forehead against his. They stayed like that for a long moment, just feeling each other's presence. 3 months passed. The palace was repaired. The Keeper conspiracy was completely dismantled. Dozens of noble houses were investigated and many lost their positions of power. Queen Morel pushed forward with her reforms, opening Valerian society to new ideas and deeper cooperation with other species. Jiwan recovered fully, though he now carried a new scar that crossed over his old ones. The marks formed a pattern on his chest that Valerian healers said looked like their ancient symbol for bridge or connection. It seemed fitting he led a new security force that combined human and Valerian guards. The mixing of species and techniques created something stronger than either could achieve alone. Daeho became his second in command. Jisoo trained Valerian snipers in human tactics. Captain Minho returned to Earth but visited often. Ambassador Hyeji remarked one day while reviewing reports that the human-Valerian alliance had grown stronger in 3 months than anyone had thought possible in 3 years. The change was visible across the entire galactic coalition. Other species watched and learned. If humans and Valerians could work together so successfully, perhaps old prejudices were worth reconsidering. 5 years after the coronation attack, Jiwan stood on a balcony overlooking Valaris Prime. The city sparkled in the light of twin moons. Beside him stood Morel, no longer just his queen, but officially his partner. The announcement of their relationship had caused controversy at first, but Morel had faced down all opposition. She was the queen. She made her own choices.